Welcome back to Explorcation. We're Jamie and Skylar, and we are not very good fishermen, but in this video, we're really hoping to change that. We'll be taking you around 20 miles off the St. Pete shoreline on a 10-hour fishing trip with our friends at Hubbard's Marina. We'll be attempting to catch snapper, grouper, porgies, and hogfish while fishing in some pretty rough waters of 60 to 90 feet deep. So stick around to see how many fish we catch, how seasick we get, and whether or not we'd recommend this 10-hour trip for other beginners like us. And along the way, we'll provide you with a few of the tips that we learned to make the most of your day at sea. We arrived at Hubbard's Marina on Johns Pass at 6 a.m., approximately 1 hour before our 7 a.m. departure time. After collecting our tickets at the ticket office, we watched the sun rise over the pass while awaiting our departure.
Ready to get some fish?
Yes, we gotta get our bags checked first to make sure we don't have any contraband, like bananas.
Thankfully, we had packed no bananas, and our bags passed the inspection. And after grabbing our bait, it was finally time to board the friendly fishermen. The boat is licensed for up to 110 passengers, but only sails with a maximum of 60 anglers. On this day, we were just a bit over half full, with somewhere between 30 and 40 anglers, including our group of 4. With everyone aboard, we departed the marina right around 7 a.m., and once the drawbridge opened, we were off. Once out in the Gulf, we quickly realized that we would be in for a rougher ride than we had expected, as the forecast called for just 1 to 2 foot waves, but the ones we got were closer to 3 foot. And while our massive boat was certainly big enough to handle the waves, it did result in a pretty choppy ride, especially at the front of the boat.
So we just went under the Johns Pass Bridge maybe about 15 minutes ago, and I think our ride out to the fishing spot is gonna be 1.5 to 2 hours.
Once we do get out there, I think we're going to be out there fishing for about 6 hours before we head back. And they said that grouper is currently out of season, but hopefully we will catch some snapper and maybe some hogfish.
But the excitement of catching some fish was starting to be replaced by a fear of getting seasick, or at least for Skylar anyway.
So we got a little chop today on the water. I don't think this accurately captures like how rocky this is right now. So Skylar went to the back because he gets motion sickness a lot more easy than I do. Everyone has abandoned me to go to the back of the ship where it's not so rocky. But even just getting to the back, it was a challenge. Careful! So a tip is, if you do get seasick, you might want to book a rod spot that is further to the back of the boat, or just go to the back of the boat for the ride out and back.
For me, the chop wasn't too bad, as I don't easily get motion sickness, and I was wearing a motion sickness patch, but Skylar does easily get seasick, so for him, the ride out was a bit of a struggle.
Now each of us do have assigned spots on the boat for our fishing rod, and whenever you do book with Hubbard's online, you get to pick that spot. Now an add-on you can book is a meal ticket, and you actually get breakfast and lunch, so I think I'm going to go and check out what they're offering for breakfast.
Around this point, I was also starting to feel just a tad bit seasick, so while breakfast sandwiches were being offered, I decided to wait until the boat was anchored before eating. After about 1.5 hours at sea, the ship's staff started preparing our rods to fish, and we knew it wouldn't be too much longer until we could bait up our hooks and drop our first line.
Jamie's baiting her on hook. Woo.
I know, I'm like bracing myself here.
At last, our boat was anchored and it was time to fish. And although the boat was definitely still rocking, I was ready to catch my first big one. But it soon became quite clear that we had no idea what we were doing.
First cast of the day.
On this trip, we would be bottom fishing, which means that we'd want to try to keep our bait just inches off of the Gulf floor. But it turns out that this is much easier said than done on a wavy day like this one. And this was completely different from our experience pond fishing in the Midwest as kids. And while there were over 100 times throughout the day that we thought we might have bites, we never knew for sure, as the weight hitting the sea floor could feel very similar to a fish bite. Thankfully, the Hubbard's crew was more than willing to give us some pointers on how to catch some fish and how to get our hooks unstuck on this far from ideal fishing day.
Sometimes it does get a little calm, and other times these waves just keep rolling in.
While we weren't having much luck early on, Skylar's sister eventually reeled in our group's first fish of the day. But unfortunately, it was a grouper, so we'd have to throw it back. And after a few minutes of mostly unsuccessful fishing, it was time to move on to another spot.
Alright, we are in our second spot. First spot, I got a bite. They took my bait though. And right now, Skylar is just filming and trying not to throw up because it's still pretty rough out here.
By this time, I was getting more comfortable operating my reel, but I was still having no luck catching fish.
So we are getting ready to bait and drop at our third spot of the day. So far our group has only caught one fish, but that's a good thing about going on a full day fishing trip, that if you go to a few spots and the fish aren't biting, and they're gonna keep moving until they find a spot where they are.
By the third spot of the day, the seas did seem to be slightly calmer, and Skylar was starting to feel quite a bit better, so he decided to put down the camera and join the rest of us fishing.
Bait them up, drop them down.
And it was around this time that our group's luck started to change.
Yay!
The second member of our group to get on the board was Skylar's brother-in-law, whose catch was our only gray snapper of the day and our very first keeper of the day. By this time, we were all starting to get bites and were having a lot of fun, but we'd still need to catch a few more keepers to have enough for dinner. Thankfully, my first catch was a keeper too, and was our second porgy of the day.
Alright, Jamie got her first fish.
I don't know what it is.
At this point, we'd caught 4 fish total, with everyone but Skylar catching at least one. And while we briefly all thought that Skylar had a big one, it turned out to just be a snag. By now, it was early afternoon and we were all getting pretty hungry. We were happy to find that there was a small kitchen on board, and on this day, Butch was grilling burgers. In fact, we all agreed that these cheeseburgers lived up to Butch's claim that they're the best cheeseburgers in 20 miles. Now re-energized and with 2 hours of fishing still to go, Skylar was determined to get his first fish of the day, and thankfully, at our fourth stop of the day, they were biting.
Skylar got a porgy!
Finally.
Yay! We all got one at least.
Oh, I'll get it, guys.
Thank you.
Finally on the board.
There you go. Called a blue line porgy for obvious reasons.
Yeah, they're cool
They're so
looking.
pretty.
Yep. They have translucence. You see the blues through the fins too. See it?
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah, how it kind of lights up.
Very pretty.
While we were all a little concerned that Skylar would go home empty-handed, he actually ended the day with 3 fish and 2 keepers.
Yeah, number 3
Number
because
3.
that one you didn't.
Yeah, I had to throw the grouper back.
Nice.
Well, we got enough fish for dinner at least.
Yeah, that's a win.
And speaking of dinner, we'll show you which restaurant we ate our catch at the end of this video. But for now, we're going to tally up our fish, recap our experience, and enjoy a couple cold beers as we head back to shore. Our total fish tally was 10, with almost all of them being caught in the second half of our trip. 2 of our 10 fish were groupers, which would have to be thrown back, leaving us with 8 keepers total, including 7 porgies and 1 gray snapper. While some of the more experienced fishermen on our trip did fare much better than we did, we had a ton of fun thanks largely in part to the amazing Hubbard's Marina crew.
So I think we're probably about 30 minutes from John's Pass, and gosh, that time flew by. I think we all could have stayed out a little bit longer once we got used to all the waves.
Imagine how fast it would have gone if we were catching fish most of the time.
I know, yeah. It would have like really flown by had the fish been biting more, but it still went by fast.
Yeah, it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Far from perfect conditions, but
Yes.
still a lot of fun.
Far from perfect conditions. Whoa. It's still pretty windy and wavy, but we still had a lot of fun. We caught a few fish. We all agreed we would do it again, even if we knew it was going to be this rocky. Overall, great experience. The captain did a great job moving us around to different spots in order to find the fish, and Paul and Skipper were wonderful. Anytime we had any issues, they also helped provide some tips to help us catch the fish. And we also have to thank Butch for preparing the food and making sure that we had plenty of drinks and snacks.
While our group's day of fishing may have been over, the excitement was not, as we enjoyed watching a couple of the more expert fishermen attempt to reel in a big one off the back of the boat. After a long fight, they were able to reel in this 26-inch Spanish mackerel. As we navigated the last few miles back to shore, we couldn't wait to have our catch filleted and cooked up for us. But before we get to that, we have to mention that in addition to all sorts of fishing charters, Hubbard's Marina also offers dolphin watching, sunset, snorkeling, camping, and shelling tours, as well as ferries to Shell and Egmont Key. And while we always seem to run into some sort of inclement weather when we go out with Hubbard's, we still always have an awesome time. and we'd highly recommend any of Hubbard's Marina's services. Now back at the marina, we collected our catch and made our way off of the boat, where Paul and Skipper filleted all of our fish for just a few bucks. We then took our catch right next door to the Friendly Fisherman restaurant, which will cook your catch either fried, grilled, or blackened. We opted to have our fish cooked both blackened and Cajun fried, and both came out looking delicious. And while we honestly couldn't tell the difference between the snapper and the porgy, we can tell you that both were absolutely amazing and were the perfect way to cap off a fun-filled day. Want to see more of our Gulf Coast adventures with Hubbard's Marina? Then go ahead and click on this playlist next. Thanks for watching!